In this tutorial, we're going to continue talking about variables. We're going to focus on one specific aspect of variables: naming. The way you name variables is important. You want to give your variables a meaningful name in a consistent manner. For example, if I wanted to write person's name, so let person's name equal Susan. Now that's readable. I can see that says person's name. But it might be better if I actually capitalized the first letter of the second word, because that is actually more readable, because the capital letter to my eye indicates a new word, so I don't have to search for meaning. For example, if I could say it is a variable about the day of the week equals. Now that's a really long variable name, but it's a little hard to read. But if I capitalized the first letter of every word, it is actually a little bit more easy to read. It is a variable about the day of the week. Now what I'm doing here is a type of writing called camel case. It's all written in lowercase, and the first letter of each word is in uppercase. That is how you should name your variables. Additionally, you'll notice something else. I've given the variables a meaningful name, because this makes more sense. If I just went let P equal Susan, that's not as clear as person's name. Because if I had 100 variables, like let X equal John, let A equal 2, and so on and so forth, after a while I would forget what all those separate small names meant. But if I give them a meaningful name, I'm much more likely to be able to find and use the code that I've written quickly. Now the thing about variables is that they can vary. We can change their value. So if I just delete this, and over here I go person's name, it tells me it's Susan. Later on I could actually change that to person's name equals Tony. And when I run my code over here and see what is stored, it tells me the name is Tony. The name or the value of the variable has changed. Happens with numbers as well. So let X equal 5. X equals 10. Over here it tells me that X equals 10. Or I could do things like, instead of X equals 5, I go X equals the value of X plus 1. So here X equals 5, so now X is going to be 5 plus 1, so X is going to be equal to 6. So I'll save that, and it tells me X is equal to 6. So my variables can change. But what if you're in a situation where you didn't want this variable to change? It was really important and it didn't change. Just say you're doing some maths and you had the value of pi in there. So pi is 3.1415 on and on and on. If I use let, later on I could make a mistake in my code and change pi to the value of 3. Pi equals 3. And that might break my calculations if I was calculating the circumference of a circle, for example. What if we needed to protect our variable so we couldn't change it accidentally later on? Well, there is actually a way to do that. Instead of using let, we use const. Const means constant. So I can see that pi up here is 3.1415, If I try and change pi later on, pi equals 3, my console gives me an error. Now it said uncaught type error, assignment. Now an assignment is making something equal to something else. That's what assignment is. You're assigning a value to be held by a variable. Assignment to a constant variable. Okay. So it says I cannot change the value of a constant. It's fixed. And additionally, there's more information here that is going to be really useful. It says in index.html, so it tells me the name of the file that has the error. And it has the number of 19 because it tells me which line the error is occurring on. So I go down here and line 19, there is my error. So this is some debugging information. And if I save that now, my error goes away. Now just one other piece of information about constants, if you use constants. A way to remember they are constant is to use all capital letters when you are naming them. Now if you're using all capital letters for a constant, what happens if you have multiple words in that name? For example, constant color red equals red. The way you would signify the space is you would use an underscore. So this tutorial, to recap what we've covered. What we've done is we've talked about camel case and naming variables and giving them meaningful names. We've talked about the fact that the value of a variable can change when we use let. We also introduced the idea of a constant, a variable whose value cannot change. And we talked about the naming convention that you use when you are using constants in your code. So this should give you a good idea how to use variables and how to name them. They are fundamental for code and we will use them all the time.